Sure. Let's call the meeting to order at 6:04. On March 17th, it's a special meeting of the HRC. Welcome.
And happy St. Patrick's Day.
All right, I will take roll call. Commissioner Ansari. Here. Commissioner Barr.
Here.
Vice Chair Causey. Here. Commissioner Shea. Here. Commissioner Carnum. Chair Kraus.
Here.
Commissioner Stimler.
Here.
You have a quorum, Chair.
Thank you. Should we move to public comment first for items not on the agenda?
Changes, deletions are first, so I believe you wanted to make a change to that.
Oh, okay, it was third on my, anyway.
But the time to make the changes is now.
All right, there are changes to the agenda. The first item will be a report on the ad hoc subcommittee on rail safety and youth mental health. The presenter is our Vice Mayor Greer Stone. Our second item will be mental health and a summary of the adult sectors. First will be a discussion on the homeless and RV dwellers and the impact of mental health. That will be with Amber Stein and Kevin Ashland from Move Mountain Youth. The second discussion will be on vets and mental health, and we're fortunate to have Aaron Glantz from Stanford University, who is an award-winning investigative journalist for decades, a Peabody Award winner, and a Pulitzer Prize finalist. He will talk about his decades of work with vets and particularly medical and mental health issues. Our next issue will return to the agenda with planning talking about, on the third issue, the San Antonio Road Area Plan, Land Use and Transportation, Alternative Study. And Sophie, are you leading that?
Which part?
The San Antonio land use.
No, that will be led by planning.
Okay. And then we'll go back to city official reports and commissioner reports and staff reports. All right? That's our agenda as we move forward.
Michelle, or Chair, sorry, Commissioner Barr. Chair Kraus?
No,
Not yet. I'm very sorry. There was a error in the agenda, and the item that Vice Mayor Stone was going to speak to is not on the agenda, so we can't add it at this time.
How did that fall off the agenda?
I believe it was when I thought that all of the mental health things were going to be moved to the April meeting, and Vice Mayor Stone, I am so sorry.
Maybe a suggestion, I don't know if this would be permissible if we can move my council liaison comments to the beginning of the meeting, and it would just be a prolonged council member update because it's consistent with the work that I do through the liaison work. And I hear no objection from the city attorney. So that's always a good thing. If that's fine with the chair.
It's fine with the chair.
Sorry, can I quick comment though? Just because it's such a controversial and hot topic, I would just advise maybe if we have other mental health things in April, I would want to make sure that the public had an opportunity to comment on this if they had wanted to. But if you give it as an update, I'm very comfortable with that. But I just want to make sure that if we do have mental health things on the agenda in April, that we give the public an opportunity to comment on it. So maybe like the fuller presentation could happen in April, but an update could happen
Am I
today.
correct in that this is just a summary of the Churchill meeting that happened last week?
Well, the presentation I had planned was a little more comprehensive of work that the city has done over the last few years on youth mental health, with an update as well from that ad hoc.
It's an invaluable discussion of what the city has done. It's not touching upon suicides or the intimate details of the passing of the many people.
I'm not asking for intimate details, I just want to make sure that the public has enough advance notice that they can participate if they choose to, and on a topic that is very important to this community. So, because of that reason, it's unfortunate it wasn't on the agenda because that would have given people the update, but I think an update is very fine. Like, I'm totally comfortable with an update, but maybe we could invite public discussion on it if we have a similar topic. It sounds like there's multiple mental health topics coming up, so maybe the next time we could.
Commissioner, we will have more
Yeah.
talks about
Yeah.
this where we can make sure it's on the agenda and make sure that the public is aware.
Yep.
And then you guys will have a better understanding as well. So
Yep,
I think
that's fine.
moving it to council liaison is perfect.
Okay, yeah, thanks.
Okay, let's proceed.
I have one
Oh, I'm sorry.
correction. Just one correction on page 51 of the packet. There is a subcommittee.
We will address that when we're on that
Perfect.
item.
Thank you,
Yes.
thank you.
And just to clarify, so we're going to move the council liaison report up to after public comment?
Excuse me, I think we'll do public comment first on items not on a new agenda, and then we will move to Vice Chair Stone's extended public comment with slides.
So as my liaison report.
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you.
Are there public comment?
Yes, we do. Deborah G., you're invited up. And you have 3 minutes to speak.
You guys have been talking about CDAW a lot, and Vicki Vinger's been talking about CDAW, and there is an opportunity to put your money where your mouth is. That whole big women's justice push that's happening, yeah? Caltrain, the meeting is on Thursday night, and they are looking to eliminate, preventing people from using cargo bikes, and this is a women's issue because all transportation decisions around bicycle transportation, and Commissioner Causey should be fairly familiar with this differentiation, have been about male, typically male, commute patterns, and women's needs are, running errands, going to the doctor, going to and from daycare, commuting your kid to daycare, are not considered, and Caltrain is not taking it into account, and my friend Brianna, who had to leave Palo Alto because she couldn't afford the rent, and they got a nice place in Sunnyvale, and she commutes in, and she has got the regulations 71.5-inch cargo bike so she can take her kid to daycare, is not going to be able to do it because Caltrain decided that for some reason that's as important to eliminate as it is for these rather shady men who bring their motorcycles on board. I'm not kidding. The Caltrain conductors can't seem to differentiate between actual motorcycles. They're not legal. They take up all the space, and a woman taking her child to daycare. So that's happening, and I would hope the HRC could at least send a note to Caltrain or, chat up Pat Burt, who's on the board, and say, hey, this is a women's issue. Let's talk about CDAW. I think I have that right. I don't remember what the acronym stands for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, is there anyone online who would like to speak? Please raise your hand now. I don't see anyone online.
Now let's move to the approval of minutes for the February meeting.
Yes, I would move that we approve the minutes of the February 12th meeting.
We need a second.
I second.
All right, and then I will do the roll call vote to approve the minutes. Commissioner Ansari,
Approved.
Vice Chair Kazi,
Aye.
Chair Kraus,
Aye.
Commissioner Barr,
Aye.
Commissioner Stimler,
Aye.
Commissioner Shea,
Aye.
and Commissioner Carnum is absent. Thank you, the motion passes.
Okay, so can we proceed to the council liaison report?
Okay, thank you, Chair, and I appreciate your flexibility as well as the rest of the commission in allowing me to maybe give a slightly longer liaison report than typical. One, since I'm including it all here, following up on what the public speaker just said, on this coming Monday council meeting, we are going to be starting with a proclamation recognizing March as Women's History Month. I understand the mayor is planning, I guess, more of a ceremony there and inviting, I believe, past Palo Alto, I guess, female leaders and mayors and things, and encourage all of you to be able to show up as well and recognize the important month. And then, in kind of keeping with that theme, we will be discussing really taking action on the CDOT ordinance, which I know has been a long time coming. And then as well, that would be of interest to the commission, is we'll be doing interviews for the Human Relations Commission as well on Monday. So Monday really is an HRC themed meeting. So I encourage you to either show up or whoever else you'd like to participate in that process. And I believe that is my main just kind of then update there. Perfect, my slides are up, so thank you to staff. So I'll just give an update on, I guess, key city actions that the city has been doing really over the last couple of years on youth mental health and what we continue to do today and in the future, and in particular, an update as well coming from the rail safety ad hoc. So to start, a little update, I guess when in 2024, when I was mayor, I convened the Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing Task Force, and it brought together leaders in the community and the region specializing in youth mental health. We had experts from Stanford University, from PAUSD, from our own staff, from community members, and the point of that ad hoc was really to be able to identify where might there be some service gaps, to be able to try to elevate youth voices, and ultimately to try to develop real actionable policies for the city council to be able to consider and implement. I think at the time in particular, I was very concerned. I'm a teacher during the day, and I was both seeing in my classroom and also reading the data across the country that youth mental health and suicidal ideation was really at an all-time low or high, however you look at that, and was concerned that we could be seeing additional teen suicides in the community. That was the issue that really drove me into public service. In the first place, I graduated during the first suicide cluster, so this has always been a top concern of mine. Through that task force, we met throughout the year, and there was a lot of incredible conversations with both youth representatives that we had on the task force, as well as our experts, and we were able to, I think the first part was really struggling with the actual kind of needs assessment study piece of it, and the lack of local data that we really had. But beyond that, we were able to kind of identify the need for expanded access to mental health services. We were able to have conversations around the problem of only having one teen center in South Palo Alto, the need for an additional one Now, of course, we have the new teen center opening up here near, well, just a few blocks away from us. Identified the issue that young people are not driving at rates that they once did, and so actual access to youth mental health services or other just teen activities was really lacking, and so the council was able to respond by offering free rides on Palo Alto Link, and in addition to just additional funding as well. And then ultimately, I think one of the greatest things that came out of this task force was the recommendation that the city engage in the JED Foundation, which I'll talk about a little more in the next slide, or oncoming slide, so if you can. So over the last couple of years, the council has really identified youth mental health as one of the biggest problems facing the city, and has directed the appropriate resources to trying to improve and offer additional services. So we've dedicated funding that has helped us expand the teen center and various recreation program, including building another teen center. We were able to preserve a senior management analyst position inside the city manager's office that really focuses on wellness efforts. Various community mental health events and workshops, I'll talk a little bit more about that. We've done multiple youth mental health surveys and increased data collection, and working on more prevention, intervention, peer support initiatives as well. So really appreciate the council for dedicating resources to this. Next slide. So just kind of put some numbers. I know the HRC is very familiar with these, but the council has really, again, expanded funding to our various nonprofits. I wasn't able to find in my just quick glance of, for some like Project Safety Net. Of course, I know you're all familiar with Alcove, and they're funded by the county, and kind of, I'm sure you've all been following what has been happening there, but looks like good news that Alcove is going to be able to stick around Palo Alto. It's not final at the Board of Supervisors, but coming out of the committee, which our supervisor serves on, looks like the recommendation will be to preserve Alcove. It'll be maybe a little different than it was before, but ultimately continuing to serve Palo Alto and Palo Alto youth. Great, next slide. I think one of the really great programs that would be wonderful for more people to take advantage of is mental health first aid training. It's offered through Momentum for Health. And ultimately what it does is it teaches residents to be able to support their loved ones and neighbors, how to identify when somebody's going through a crisis, how to be able to understand how to not only identify, but then respond. Participants are able to recognize those common signs of mental health challenges, substance use challenges, know how to interact with somebody who's experiencing one of those crises, know how to connect a person then with the available help and resources in the community, and to be able to use self-care tools and techniques. So you can find information for this on the Palo Alto website. We have several upcoming trainings on April 11th, April 25th, May 9th, May 23rd, June 13th, June 27th. And I understand it's kind of broken up into a two-part training. There's a virtual piece that you need to complete on your own at least a week before the in-person training. So it's a great opportunity, and I think it's exciting that all Palo Alto residents over the age of 18 can take this training for free. And the school district also offers this training for, I believe, school staff and students. Next slide. Another thing you've probably heard about, which I think is really exciting, this really goes beyond just, of course, youth mental health, but also just generally mental health across the city. The city has what's called the Psychiatric Emergency Response Team. It's called the PERT program. And basically what it does is it partners a police officer with a mental health professional. So that way when police are responding to somebody who's having a mental health crisis, that we don't have somebody with a badge and a gun showing up. I mean, we do, but in addition, we have somebody who's really more trained to be able to be the front person for that. And we've seen similar programs in Portland, Oregon, and other places around the country with real incredible success at being able to de-escalate and get people the help and service that they need. I'm sure this commission has been aware that I think for about 2 years now, that program was really not active, not because from the city side, but we did not have the mental health clinician provided by the county. It took them a while to be able to staff that position. So just recently, I think within the last month or two, that position's now been staffed, and so our PERT program is up and running. Next. So the JED partnership, and this is one of the things, again, that I'm most excited about because the potential is really incredible, and we're already experiencing the benefits of this partnership. So the JED Foundation is a nationally recognized leader in youth mental health and suicide prevention. They've been working now for decades on this issue, mostly in school districts and college campuses, but they were really excited to be able to engage with the city of Palo Alto at the municipal level. They do have some of that experience, but mostly in the schools. And yeah, this recommendation really came out of the Youth Mental Health and Wellbeing Task Force, kind of realizing that there is so much, of course, community expertise on this subject here in Palo Alto and a lot of incredible nonprofits, but that we had never really tried engaging an outside agency that just focuses on this. And we discovered JED through that, which was wonderful. So the JED partnership is going to focus on strengthening community-based suicide prevention strategies, improving post-crisis response protocols, enhancing citywide mental health systems, supporting youth-led mental health advocacy. We engaged them in a contract, and we entered the contract, I want to say September of 2025, definitely in the fall. Their first true deliverable is going to be coming out in June as a report, really that needs assessment and kind of a gap analysis report. That'll be discussed at the City School Liaison Committee, hopefully in June, maybe, depending on the timing, maybe when we return in August. So that'll be a good opportunity for the public to be able to really engage. That report will be made public as well, and hope the HRC is able to review it. So in addition to that, though, JED has been a partner with the city every step of the way since our most recent suicide. I know they've been engaging with the mayor and staff on the mayor's statement, as well as other work that the city is doing as far as the communication we're putting out there, our post-vention strategies. That have been able to really see real time how the city is responding to that crisis, and that is, I know, going into their development of that report that's going to be released. And I think ultimately, one of the most exciting things about the JED Foundation is they're going to be able to then ultimately offer the city essentially policy recommendations on how we can then move forward with greater prevention and post-vention work. Next. And then the follow-up on our rail safety ad hoc. So, of course, means restriction is always one of the most important tools in suicide prevention. Means restriction meaning removing the ways in which people commit suicide. So in response to our most recent suicide at the Churchill Crossing, but also the last several, the City Council, in partnership with the school district, has approved a contract to staff all 4 of our rail crossings with security 24/7. That was done at an incredible pace, especially being able to have a kind of cross-agency collaboration on this. So really appreciate the school district's leadership and partnership on it, as well as our own city staff, of how quickly they were able to make that happen. So if you've driven by any of our Caltrain any of our Caltrain crossings over the last few weeks, I'm sure you've seen the crossing guards out there, and they're going to be there. They're contracted for the next year. And then council is also exploring options to temporarily close the Churchill crossing. So it's that decision ultimately, yes, it needs to be made by the city council, but it also has to be made by the California Public Utilities Commission. So they get the final word in that. So right now, staff and legal is working with the CPUC on that process, understanding what it is that we need to do to be able to close it, understanding the likelihood that they will accept that and allow the closure. You probably are aware that we had a listening session last Thursday that was held at the district office, where staff and I believe all council members as well and school board members were there kind of listening, but ultimately, and some of you, so thank you for showing up. And then, of course, ongoing internal discussions as well with police, fire, safe routes to school, because there will be kind of consequences with closing Churchill as far as traffic impacts and bike pedestrian routes into and out of Pali. So we're considering all of those. For now, that decision of the temporary closure is scheduled for the April 13th City Council meeting. So I encourage you to show up and participate and weigh in on that as well. And ultimately, the work continues. So we're getting new partnerships and opportunities continue to arise. I think one of the good things about how much we are focused on talking about this issue is more and more I get nonprofits, business owners, community members reaching out and asking how they can help. So we are working right. I've been having conversations with Palo Alto University and city staff on engaging them in partnership. Yeah, that was when after I had formed the Youth Mental Health Task Force, the president of Palo Alto University reached out and said, hey, we got one of the leading universities in the country that train people in how to be clinicians and psychologists, and they have a big focus on youth mental health. So we've been working with them ever since to try to formalize a relationship. I understand they're going to be submitting a proposal sometime soon. Children's Health Council has reached out. They are offering trainings that are happening, I believe, this week, and they plan to offer more. Again, private businesses finding ways that we can create additional third spaces for our youth. And we continue to have community engagement and conversations that are happening across the city. So really important. Appreciate the work that the HRC plays in this. I really appreciated your discussion in your work plan around the importance of youth mental health and being a partner with the council and the rest of the community on this. So that is my very long council liaison update. I promise it'll never be that long again.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Stone.
Yeah. And I think general practice is questions are allowed during council liaison reports. So if there are any questions.
They are.
Just out of curiosity, is Dr. Joshi still involved with this work?
Yes, in a variety of, I don't think I'd even be able to point to just one thing that Dr. Joshi is working on. He's been a partner with all of us on it.
Because I know that at the first suicide cluster, he really stepped up and did tremendous work and actually was awarded the tall tree for his work on that as well. So I hope that he is participating to this day.
No, deservedly so that he got that award, and he is very much engaged. I've had countless conversations with him over the last few years.
And I believe we're going to have Dr. Robert Adlershine at our next meeting talking about youth mental health. And the prior gentleman will be on spring break with his kids, so we won't have the honor of having him.
Any other questions? Okay. Well, and thank you for your flexibility and allowing me to do my liaison report at the beginning. Because of the change in schedule, I have a prior commitment at 7 o'clock, so hang around for a little bit to hear the other great work that's being done, but I appreciate the flexibility of the commission.
Thank you. Let's go on to the second presentation by Mountain View Moves.
Okay, so my name's Kevin, we're with Move Mountain View. And just going to talk a little bit about homelessness and mental health, what that looks like.
It's hard to hear you.
Is it hard to hear me?
Move, embrace the mic.
Embrace the mic, all right. Yeah, so first thing first, when we're talking about mental health and homelessness, I think it's important to point out a stigma and how someone might be feeling and being looked at and being considered for being homeless and all the criteria that may follow. A feeling of being othered, a feeling of being different, a feeling of I've done something wrong. So starting out, not everyone experiencing homelessness has a diagnosed mental health condition. Some do. And others may develop heightened symptomology that may progress to a diagnosed mental health condition in being homeless. But we look to do as an organization is to conduct an intake, conduct an evaluation to really understand where a person sits, to understand what their expressed symptomology may look like, to build a foundation of trust, ability to stabilize in our program. We're safe parking, so we provide shelter via individuals that live in their cars and RVs at our safe parking lots, and services pretty consistently once a week to once a month to every other week, meeting with individuals, meeting them where they're at, and really coming to understand their history, where they come from, where they currently sit, and where they wish to go. This revolves around families, around individuals of all ages. We've seen just about every single diagnosis come through our doors, and really provide the grounds, again, for an understanding for folks to move forward. So what does that look like? We're talking about mental health symptoms and recognition of mental health symptoms and meeting with people so that they're able to build an insight into what that looks like for them and their definitions and understanding what their definitions of that looks like and adjusting so that if our definitions trigger a certain response that's not conducive to the development of a cohesive relationship, that we're making changes every time we're meeting to implement the work each and every day to create stronger, trusting relationships, to provide resources for individuals, connections to employment, and be able to develop an income and savings, to be able to understand what the low-income housing tax credit availability looks like to apply to housing in the area, all the while looking at support systems that currently exist in their family, in their structure of friends, and maybe the behavioral health programs that they've previously been involved in. So a lot of the times with the heightened symptomology and us asking for folks to really change, to move forward, and also to be self-reflexive, that requires a lot of vulnerability. And with change, the really thing that we're looking at is pain, because it's, anytime we're asked to change, there's a lot of fear, there's the unknown, uncertainty, it's uncomfortability. Any of us and all of us will remain in our comfort zone for as long and as consistent as we can. But when asked to change, that elevates symptomology. So when it comes to mental health and homelessness, and we're asking for forward motion, we have to take all these things into account. In building that trust and the motivation for change, we look to help people to move forward. So I'll let Amber kind of give some go over as to a lot more about what we do.
Good evening. I think when we're looking at mental health and homelessness, we can just pretty much assume that anyone that is homeless, and we deal with clients that are living in their vehicles, they are going to have mental health issues, whether it is a mild set of depression because they're newly homeless, or full-fledged psychotic episodes because they have had so much trauma, maybe from starting from being homeless, or the trauma began when they were children. And so therefore, part of the reason they are homeless is because they haven't been able to fit into society in the way that they should, and their mental health condition has prevented them from being able to keep a job, being able to stay in a family, being able to advocate for themselves in terms of going to psychiatric appointments and getting their medication. We see this again and again. We get individuals that maybe have been to a therapist and they come to us saying, I know I have a therapist. And then we say, okay, what kind of medication are you taking? Are you on your med? What is your diagnosis? A lot of the people don't understand. They don't understand it. And also because they're homeless and because there is very little advocacy for them, I think in therapy, they are also the ones that will receive the least amount of care. And in the work that we do, we have asked them to at least, sign a release so we can speak to their therapist. We can say this is what we see in the daily way that they're living in their RVs or in their cars, and what other form of service could they receive from that particular therapist or another mental health provider. The other thing that we see is a lot of them come to us from a lot of trauma. We are talking about individuals, 40, 50 years old, still carrying their childhood trauma, having been sexually abused multiple times, having been neglected by a family or beaten by their parent. So this trauma, it has not been addressed in their childhood. So therefore, they carried it on into their adulthood, and then on top of that, they have become homeless. So there's a stigma of becoming homeless, and then there's a stigma of the trauma and not being able to talk about it, and the shame of not wanting to recognize it. So for us, it's like peeling an onion. It's not only you're trying to figure out how did you become homeless, were you in an apartment, and so all of a sudden you ended up in a car because your apartment dwelling was bought up and Google built a more expensive one. That's a simple story. That's a simple story. We have others that don't come from that kind of situation. They come because they are mentally and psychologically not able to function in the normal world with all the things that are expected of them without ongoing support. And we're talking about individuals that, for example, we have a lady now, she's a hoarder. We know she's a hoarder, and so we have policies of how clean the parking lots should be, the safe parking. We have city mandates, we have fire mandates, so we have all of that we have to live up to, but at the same time, we have to understand her mental condition. Where is she at? She's bipolar, so is she at a point where she can actually clean up, or is she going through her cycle, and so therefore, asking her to clean up or put anything together is virtually impossible. Did she forget to take her medication? Did she not have enough money, or her insurance was stopped for whatever reason, so therefore she couldn't get her medication? Those kinds of follow-ups are very, very necessary when you're dealing with the homeless population. And besides the big traumas we're talking about in our society, when you are looking at the capacity other people have, the amount of money that is around us, and you are in your car, that is a very depressing place to be. And we see people that are newly becoming homeless calling and saying, you know what, I'm going to lose my apartment tomorrow or in the next day. And then we've said, well, there's this kind of funding, whatever. But if they lose their apartment and they come to us in a car, we see them gradually, their mental health declining again and again and again and again. I can't say it's preventable, but I think there should be a way for us to be able to uphold them in terms of letting them know an assurance that this is not their fault. This is part of this is a normal cycle when people are losing their housing and their shelter and are in fear of what is out there and how are they going to survive is a natural consequence of that. The car dwellers that we see are probably they have a lot more advantage because these are people that have some form of resilience and decided instead of being in a tent, instead of being outside, I'm going to put together the savings that I have and I'm going to buy an RV. I'm going to stay in my car. These are people that have planned. So they didn't plan to become homeless, but in the likelihood that I am or I'm going to become, this is what I will do. So the ones that we are seeing are mentally a little bit, I don't know, more stable, slightly stable than the ones that you are going to get from the tent. So I see our work as at Move, in terms of when we capture the individuals that come to us that are in their vehicle, the purpose is to make sure they get housing. And because if that person ends up on the ground, their mental health for sure is going to deteriorate even more. So if there's any way that we can figure out how they're going to be in rapid rehousing or a shelter setting or permanent housing, that is the goal. And then the other part of it is trying to figure out, our system is pretty weak in county, state, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, in terms of our mental health system is very weak. We have all kinds of programs, but the understanding of the homeless is also not very well understood. How do you serve that population? How do they serve their mental health? They ignored you to come today. What? Did their phone not work? Did they not pay for it? Was it deliberate? Those kinds of understandings have to be in place before we can say that these people are ignoring coming for their counseling program or anything of that nature. And then we have also cultural differences. We have many clientele that come from Hispanic and other backgrounds that counseling and mental health is a shame, is looked at as shameful if you have a weakness of any kind of that nature. So we are trying to work with them in building that trust and saying, you know what, it looks to me that you are going through an emotional process right now, and it's very, very difficult, and we try not to name it, we try not to label it, because that's the last thing that we want to do. But how about if you get together with your case manager like Kevin, or for a while we were running groups where they could talk amongst each other. These are not the people that are on heavy medication or are having psychosis fits, but these are the people that we see are genuinely in a depressed situation and could use that sense of community, that sense of support from one another, and also to see that others are in the same situation as they are not alone, that this is normal. There's nothing about it abnormal for people in their situation. It is a very tricky place to be in mental health, to work with the homeless, as well, because people they're disregarded already anyway, as for being homeless, for being in the situation that they are. So to even reach out to some of the mental health services and say, hey, I have a client that is in need of this, could you come? And they come and they see that individual. It's not a follow-up the same as if I was to call for myself and say, this is my situation, could you come and could we, because the stigma is there, that individual is homeless, I went to their car, they didn't respond, so I'm not going back because they don't respond to me. Because the process takes so long to get that trust, to get that person to a point of understanding this is beneficial to them. And then also there's a huge amount of loneliness amongst the homeless, especially car dwellers. Car dwellers tend to be one or two in a car. The RV dwellers tend to be more family units or couples, so the mental health aspect of the loneliness is not as much, but car dwellers are very, very lonely. They have no one to talk to. I remember when I started working in this program, a woman came to me. She was probably in her early 80s or so, and she said, do you do counseling? And at that time, I was the only employee. And I said, well, and then she said, we need somebody to talk to because we make a really bad decision when we don't have anybody to talk to. And it was her and her dog. I was like, who is we? Oh, the dog, okay. And at that time, I had the beauty, because I was in an office by myself, to tell her, come anytime that you want to talk. And she used to come and sit on the couch and talk about whatever, or I'm thinking about going to Arizona, what do you think, da-da-da-da, just to have somebody listen to her, for her to be able to hear her own voice, made a huge difference in her being able to make decisions. I mean, think about how many of us go to our friends, how many of us go to our relatives to say, hey, you know me well enough, let me tell you what I'm thinking. What do you think? Is it a dumb decision, or should I go forward with it? They don't have that. When you are alone in a car, you don't have that, and you can't go to the store clerk and say, this is my situation, what do you think? So there's a great deal of loneliness that needs to be looked at when we're dealing with the homeless population. But I think part of it is we need to get over the stigma that people are crazy, okay? They are not intentionally crazy. They are not crazy because they choose to be. Some people are in some ways crazy because they are using foreign substances and things like that. But overall, these are human beings that are very scared, that have been somehow traumatized, maybe as most of them as children. It's a childhood trauma, so we're talking about youth and what can be done for youth. The childhood trauma that has never been treated, and then for others is because they became homeless as adults and they couldn't put the situation together for themselves. Thank you very much for letting us come and speak. We are not clinicians, but this is what we see on a daily basis, and we're privileged to come and share that with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the work you do and who you are. We're very appreciative to hear from those that work with the homeless day in and day out. So thank you. And then the final discussion will be with Aaron, who is our award-winning investigative. Do you want to?
I think we have some questions, Chair.
Do you want both, and then we do questions?
I would advise that we allow the commissioners to ask questions right after when it's fresh in their mind, and then if Move Mountain View also needs to leave, that they're able to do that.
Sure. Let's have questions. Done.
Yes, and I think you may be aware that this issue came up when the Opportunity Center was being constructed back in the early 2000s, and the County Housing Authority that was involved in it initially wanted to take the old approach, which is, all right, you have to get your substance abuse, alcohol abuse, and mental illness under control and stabilized before you're eligible for permanent housing at the Opportunity Center. And I was able to read a lot of studies from the Boston Healthcare for the Homeless Collaborative, from New York City, from Seattle, where they used permanent supportive housing as the therapy for mental illness and substance abuse. And the County Housing Authority finally agreed to that, and it has been so successful at the Opportunity Center that it confirmed the other research that, yes, they may still have mental illness and alcohol abuse, but the mental illness is much more stabilized. The alcohol abuse is much reduced by being in housing. And even the one woman who had a very serious hoarding disorder and was a threat to the entire building, they actually had to put her under a 72-hour hold. Rather than put her on the street, they put her under a 72-hour hold. They came in and they cleared out her apartment and threw it all away. And now she was angry when she came back, but she was able to stay in the apartment until she passed away about 9 months later. So permanent supportive housing is clearly the best solution, and the short-term housing in terms of the Move Mountain View and so on is very important, but we need more permanent supportive housing facilities and staff than we have now on the model of the Opportunity Center and other housing facilities. Thank you.
Let me just tell you that the beauty of the safe parking, and I'm not invested in it except I work in it, is that it's it's very low ask from our clientele. It's not fancy, we're not asking much. Park your RV, keep your area clean. We don't come and intrude into your RV, but we do make sure that you are living in a safe environment. Everything in your RV that needs to be working is working. And I have a favorite story, I'm gonna tell you that and then I'll be quiet. We had a gentleman that came a while back, and I don't know how he came to us as a referral, but anyway, he came and he needed safe parking. And one of my staff did a intake interview with him, and they came back and said, no way, no way, this guy's just not gonna make it. He is, he's psychotic, and he is completely out in left field, and plus he doesn't wanna come, he doesn't wanna stay. And it was like, well, why did he come even for the interview? So I went out there and I said, listen to him and whatever, and I said, why don't you come and stay in our parking lot for a while? You're living in your van, and looks like you need some stability. And he was like, no, use it for women and children. I don't need the space, it's okay. And so the deal I made with him was, if we need the space for women and children, we'll ask you to leave. But until then, we have space available. So he came into our parking lot, he stayed there. He stayed there, when we first started this, it was during COVID, so people could stay a little longer. He was with us for quite a while, and we saw his mental health healing. I mean, yes, lower and lower. He still talked a lot. People try to avoid him because if you got in a conversation with him, you will not be able to leave quickly. You have to know the tricks of how to leave him, politely. And then eventually we got him housed. And if you'd asked us when we took him in, would he be a client that we could have housed? I think most of the expert would have told you no. But because the ask was very low and he had a sense of community, and then eventually, as he kept going, and to talk to him and saying, you know what, you are getting too old to live in an RV. Don't you think you should be in an apartment? And one day I heard him say out loud to somebody, yeah, I'm getting too old to be living in this, so I'm gonna go to housing. And he went, he got housing here in Palo Alto. So it works. Part of it is how much in a hurry we are, to make sure people that get well on our schedule, or giving people the opportunity to actually have time to really process and be part of a community and heal. So it does work.
Are there any, okay.
Thank you so much, especially stories like that. It really, hearing you describe these experiences, it shapes so much of the work we do throughout the year. You don't have to answer this now. Feel free to send it in later, but I know we are not the only HRC that in this area, if there is a specific policy related to this, a specific listening session that you find, steps you've found other HRCs have taken that you found was extremely effective, please send it our way.
Yes.
Hi, I am curious if you've seen your residents or your clients' mental health being affected at all by the city's attempts to remove all of our RV housed residents and the systematic approaches they're taking to getting them off of our streets and out of our city.
Can you repeat that, please?
Yeah, I'm just curious how the clients you're working with who are RV dwellers are dealing with or coping with or having their mental health impacted by our city's systematic attempts to remove them from our streets and kick them out of our city.
Not well. So that's where a lot of the fear comes in, right? Because it's like, even for our clients in particular that live in their RVs, one of the greatest challenges is to build that acceptance and that trust, to be able to provide the groundwork that they're going to say, I'm going to move to housing and I'm going to give up this RV, because that's their safe haven. If I go back on the streets without my RV, the situation is not going to be the same. It's going to be much, much more difficult. And yeah.
They're afraid.
Very afraid.
Very afraid. Some have a sense of bravery in terms of, I only have to move, and I can move only, every 72 hours kind of deal. But in the long run, it is a huge haul for them. And for some, for many, it was a conscious decision, I'm going to be safe in my RV, and never even thought that there was going to be a city regulation, not just Palo Alto. We're talking about cities everywhere, that they were going to say, no, you cannot be parking on the city streets. And I think, at least from my point of view, there may come a time we as a society, as a community, are to recognize that RV dwelling, it may not be our first choice, but it should be maybe some kind of a housing option for people that have really, especially seniors, because seniors are the hardest for us to house, and they are the most vulnerable. So for them to be on the street is not safe in their RV, for them to be in a parking lot is safer, but is not necessarily the best outcome, but at least some form of a safe outcome for them, because we cannot get them more jobs, they cannot increase their pay, nothing like that. So they are really vulnerable, and there's more and more of them on the streets now.
Are there questions?
First of all, thank you. You speak about your clients with such love. It's very uplifting. Thank you for that. I'm just curious, your clients, do they normally come to you or do you go to them? And what, if they come to you, what triggers that? Like, what state are they in that they finally come to you for help?
There's a lot of reasons why they would come to us for help. In some instances, it's because police gave them like a referral to come to us. In most cases, it's word of mouth because of the services that we provided over the past, 7 years or so. But specifically, I can speak to the years that I've been there and just the outcomes, the successful outcomes that we've produced. A very, very high rate of permanent housing placements, a very high rate of positive placements. In addition to permanent housing, alternative placement, but also working with clients and individuals at their own pace and at their own time. So that word of mouth is most important, just to any grassroots movement, and that's generally why they come to us, to be safer.
One follow-up, do you ever have to turn people away?
Yes, we do, because in the cities that we work, Palo Alto and Mountain View doesn't have it as a written ordinance, but Mountain View has a written ordinance, Palo Alto doesn't, but is understood that Palo Alto residents get first option to be in our safe parking lot. And Mountain View for sure has that one in writing. So if you don't meet that demographic criteria, we will turn you away. It's, do you have children in the Palo Alto Mountain View School District? Do you work in either of these towns? Unless you're a senior citizen or disabled, then we will take you from this county. But right now, we're seeing an influx for a long time. I've been doing this for 8 years, and just within the last year, it has been a huge uptick of San Francisco residents calling us, because every city is shutting their streets. So for us to say no, it's not uncommon. We have to say no.
Could you clarify, because I know, but they run the safe parking spaces for the city of Palo Alto, the RV parking on Gang Road, and the Mountain View lots. So they have a population of people that can come to them, as well as word of mouth to others. Do you want to embellish?
Well, the referrals are done through the county Here For You hotline. We get calls through them. Police refer clientele. Life Moves, outreach teams refer clients to us. And then, like Kevin said, word of mouth is one of the biggest. And so we operate both in Mountain View and Palo Alto. Sorry, I say Mountain View because that one was the first one to come alive. But the Palo Alto one has a building. I don't know if you're aware of it. It used to be a firehouse, but now it has that building. And in that one, we have washers and dryers. We have showers available. There's a small kitchenette for those whose kitchen does not work in their RV or our car dwellers. And we have a food bank where we work with Second Harvest to run a food bank, and we have a clothes closet. And I must say, you need to be proud of yourself as Palo Altans, because the community supplies us with what we need, including towels that come to us from League of Women Voters, the funding, et cetera, and blankets as well. So I think Palo Alto is very good in supporting with the hands-on goods for what we do.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much. It's always an honor to be with you and the work that you do. Thank you. So let's move to the final discussion of the military and vets, and hear the words of wisdom from our investigative reporter and journalist who's been in war zones and now is here in another war zone and has been reporting on this for decades.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here with you. And it is a little bit odd, I must say, as a journalist to be speaking at a Human Relations Commission, but I will do my best. I'm at Stanford University this year at the Center for the Advanced Study of the Behavioral Sciences, working on a project for resilience for investigative journalists, as our own profession is not doing so well. But I spent most of my career reporting on war and military veterans, and when Michelle asked me if I would make a few remarks tonight for all of you, I said, of course, because this is a really critical community. There's 17 million American military veterans. There's 2.7 million veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, which are the longest wars in our nation's history. This generation of veterans is unique from previous generations. It's ethnically diverse, 15% Black, 14% Hispanic, 10% other. A growing segment are women. Women served alongside men in combat in these wars, and this is the generation that ended Don't Ask, Don't Tell and allowed gay, lesbian, and bisexual and transgender soldiers to serve openly. These are 3 books that I've written over the last years, and I thought I would make a slide of them because in the pictures you can kind of get a sense of what a lot of veterans have been through. The first one on my far left is a book that I wrote when I was in Iraq, and actually the body bags that you see in the back are created by Saddam Hussein when he was the president of Iraq, and were when we arrived at the U.S. military, these mass graves were unearthed. Families were able to reconnect with our loved ones, and some of our veterans have experienced instances like that. And the second is a book that I wrote about the Department of Veterans Affairs, which I'm going to get to in a minute, and you can see a gentleman at the VA Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, who's lost his legs. That's a fairly rare instance. It's very visually stunning. The major afflictions that face the veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan cannot be seen. We're talking about post-traumatic stress disorder and other mental health conditions. We're talking about traumatic brain injuries that are similar to concussions that are associated with football players from, say, multiple roadside bomb blasts where people got knocked out, but there's not necessarily shrapnel that pierced the helmet. And on the far right is a book that I edited for a group of Iraq and Afghanistan war veterans who talked about people that they had killed and their experience killing other people, and that's also an important part of the military experience. And when people come home to Palo Alto, they're coming with all of these types of experiences. So I'll go to the next slide here. Palo Alto has perhaps the most important VA hospital in the country. It serves Santa Clara County, all out to Livermore and down to Monterey, and 67,000 patients a year. And as you can see, the largest population is the post 9/11 veterans, followed by our Vietnam veterans who are getting older. And it is home to a polytrauma center, which is really important because, as I mentioned, the 2 signature injuries of the Iraq and Afghanistan conflicts are traumatic brain injury and mental health conditions like PTSD, and it can be very difficult to diagnose one from the other and devise effective treatment. And here in Palo Alto, it's one of 5 Think 5, national polytrauma centers. So people actually come from all over the country here to Palo Alto to get treatment in complex cases. And we're one of the homes of the National Center for Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. So some of the leading research and treatments in the country are are devised here. And so, there's the main campus up by the university, and there's another facility in Menlo Park on Willow Road. And then you have people coming from this whole area in the South Bay here to get this healthcare. And this is a system that's really struggling under President Trump. So the dysfunction that's striking our federal government overall is really severely impacting the VA. I just looked at some data before coming over to put a finer point on. There's over 50 vacant medical doctor positions at the Palo Alto VA right now. There's almost 100 vacant nurse positions. The terrorism that struck the U.S. federal bureaucracy under President Trump has impacted this agency, which is impacting the care of our veterans across the country, including at the Palo Alto VA. And we'll go to the next slide. I thought it was important to talk about the homelessness issue. We heard a lot of discussion of homelessness here, and I want to state that actually, here's a good news story. So you see in this slide the situation for homelessness in Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. In the most recent homelessness count, about 13,000 people, which is way up from 9,000 people in 2011. But for veterans, the number of homeless people has dropped by half. And this is mirrored all across the country, that when President Obama came in 2009, he made it a priority. He pledged to eliminate veteran homelessness in 5 years. Obviously, that was not achieved. But a real coordinated national strategy was developed, and real progress was made and continues to be made. And the solution is quite simple, really, and it actually dovetails a lot to what we were just hearing from my colleagues, is they provide people with housing vouchers and wraparound social services. It is amazing how quickly somebody is no longer homeless when you give them an apartment. And then the wraparound social services are critical too. Like the VA, like anything else, is just like, provides excellent health care, but is a terrible bureaucracy in many ways. And so when you team the person, you give them stability of the apartment, and then you give them a caseworker to help them navigate that system, which does exist for them, but which they feel is inaccessible, suddenly they're able to better access it and really behave constructively in their lives. Now, the one kind of difficult thing that I want to pass on is that, unfortunately, this is also somewhat at risk in the Trump administration. When the president released his 2026 budget, he actually proposed eliminating the very program that I just talked about completely. There was congressional pushback, and I spent most of the afternoon trying to figure out what happened with that. I mean, the entire second Trump administration, it can be unmooring because he doesn't act necessarily in a consistent way. But it seems like the Trump administration is advancing a national homeless policy, including for veterans, to move away from this kind of housing voucher and long-term support. If I was on the Human Relations Commission, I would want to best understand that and how that was going to be impacting my own community, because there's an active debate in Washington on this that could have some really serious impacts on these numbers in the next year or two. I hope this has been helpful, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions?
This is super helpful. Thanks for bringing those statistics. Where did you get them from?
The ones from HUD are, the homelessness statistics are from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. So they do the national census of homeless people every year. They've been asking about veterans since 2009. So that was one of the president's innovations, actually. President Obama was just to find out who was a veteran and who wasn't, and that allowed them to track and see whether or not they were making progress. And then obviously the Palo Alto VA statistics are from the VA. And again, they represent all the people who are coming here to get treatment from all over, the valley, all the way out to Santa Cruz, Monterey, and out to Livermore.
Do you have a sense that they're different, like how they compared nationally? I was kind of surprised. It seemed like a rather low number from what I've read?
Of
the
homeless?
percent, yeah, of the percent of homeless who are veterans.
No, I mean, I think that what you're seeing is that people are basing their assumptions on homeless veterans on outdated information. That when I first started covering this issue 20 years ago, it would be a true statement, a very high proportion of homeless people, especially homeless men, would be veterans. However, you know, I wanted to put the slide up because it's really important to understand that this is actually no longer the case.
Yeah.
And it's a negative stigma for veterans for people to assume that they could be at special risk for homelessness, when actually at this point in time, veterans are much less likely to be homeless than other portions of the population, precisely because we as a society have decided to take care of them.
Well, that's positive.
Do you know who the lead people are in DC that we need to study? Do you know who's on the Veterans Commission or Committee?
The House Veterans Affairs Committee is led by the leading Democrat on the committee is Mark Takano, who's from Riverside.
Okay.
His staff is very active.
Okay.
I don't believe at this time that there's that any of the elected representatives in the Bay Area are particularly engaged. Jackie Spear used to be very engaged on these issues,
Yes.
but she's obviously now a city supervisor in San Mateo. So she's also, I think that she's probably for 25 years had a, you know, she's, as a survivor of Jonestown, has a great interest in these issues.
Correct. Thank you. Katie, did you have a question? Thank you. Oh,
Can you share the name of the program that you're referring to? And were you referring to the controversy around the HUD COC funding?
Specifically regarding the VA, it's called HUD-VASH is the acronym. Like everything else, don't ask me to remember what it stands for, but people get very worked up about HUD-VASH, and the thing that President Trump wants to change it to is called the BRAVE program. So he says we're going to be more brave and kind of get people out of this kind of ongoing support situation into a more brave framework. I don't know what that stands for either.
sounds like the Gulf. Never mind. Anyway, do we have questions from anybody in the audience? Do we have questions online?
No one in chambers or online.
Okay, I propose we take a 5-minute break before we go on to the Planning Commission, item 3. Okay, let's start with our third presentation. Thank you for coming from the Planning Department. We appreciate it. And it's on the San Antonio Road Area Plan Use and Transportation Alternatives Study Session. And I know the council and you in planning want some comments. So bring it on.
Thank you very much, Chair, members of the Commission. My name is Robert Kane. I'm a principal planner in the Department of Planning and Development Services, and I am the project lead for the San Antonio Road Area Plan. We provide you with some additional information in your packets, but tonight my presentation is going to be pretty brief because we do want to engage in some dialogue and hear some feedback and answer questions that you might have. Next slide, please. So yeah, I'll give you a little bit of an update of what the project is, some information about our overall design strategy within the plan, a little bit about what our land use and mobility alternatives are looking like. But I also want to let you know that we plan on coming back to the Commission later in the year when we start developing our policies for this area plan. And we're going to be hopefully getting to a very deep conversation with you all about how those policies work and what you think might be effective or not effective in those policies, or how we can improve those policy ideas that we have at that time. We're not at the policy stage yet. We're still just trying to figure out sort of like the broad strokes of what the plan's going to look like. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. All the feedback that we hear from the boards and commissions, advisory boards and commissions, and from the public will be wrapped up into a study session that we present to the City Council scheduled for April 6th. Next slide, please. So the San Antonio Road Area Plan is something that has come about over the past few years. The area was designated as a priority development area by the city in 2023. And last year we began work on this area plan that looks to take this area of South Palo Alto and create a more livable community, to improve mobility options as well as mobility safety, support the city's sustainability goals, as well as enhance the economic vitality of the city. So the project, when it's done, is going to have some feasible design alternatives. We're going to have some zoning and development standards. We're going to have implementation tools and strategies, including funding mechanisms. And we're going to have some policies about when private developers want to build in this part of town, what that needs to look like. Next slide, please. So the area, if you're not familiar with it, is a 275-acre strip primarily along San Antonio Road from Alma to the Bay, as well as some of the cross streets and neighboring areas shown on the map here. It covers most of that Bayshore, Alma, San Antonio priority development area, and includes 1.8-mile length of San Antonio Road itself, which is a major connector between 101 and Alma within the city, and then of course goes on to serve Mountain View, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hills as well. The southern part of the plan area is within walking distance of the San Antonio Caltrain station. So that is something that we're looking at in this plan, is how do we get people safely to the Caltrain station that are close enough to walk? And how do we get others who are not close enough to walk also to have access, better access to the train station? Right now, there's a mix of industrial, office, commercial, and residential uses throughout the plan area. And there's a lot of single-family home residential neighborhoods on either side of the plan, both in Palo Alto and Mountain View, as well as the Baylands and some additional commercial districts in Palo Alto and in Mountain View. Next slide, please. So this is a brief timeline. As I said, we started working on the plan last March. We intend to finish the plan, if it's on schedule, in early 2028. So we're about a third of the way through the planning process right now. And this month, we're going to a lot of advisory boards and committees. We also had a public workshop earlier this month and are currently running an online survey. As I mentioned, we'll bring all of this to the City Council for a study session and then go back to them for some decisions, currently scheduled for June. And then the next phase, we're going to be developing policy recommendations before we build out the final plan, and that'll happen through the end of 2026 and through 2027. Next slide, please. So what are we looking to do in the plan area? We've decided that the whole 275-acre area shouldn't be dealt with the same across the board, that there are different sub-areas within the plan. And we're looking to help to create new neighborhoods where they don't exist and to enhance existing neighborhoods. We're going to have a focus on adding additional outdoor spaces, parks, paseos, plazas, those sorts of things, as well as other amenities and services within those neighborhoods. We're looking to create smaller walkable blocks where we can do that. And we're looking to infill San Antonio Road itself with residential, as well as creating new neighborhoods where San Antonio meets 101. We're also looking to improve bike and ped safety and walkability throughout the whole plan area, improve the streetscape character and pedestrian experience, and improve the intersections so that they're easier to cross for pedestrians and cyclists. And we also are looking at how we can improve connections to schools, because new residents means new children who will be attending either the private schools that are in the plan area or public schools either in Mountain View or in Palo Alto. Next slide, please. So this is a diagram showing the overall design area. As you can see, there's 4 main areas that are in that darker orange. Those are the areas that we think the most change is going to occur. Those are areas along Fabian Way. In the area between, there's sort of a triangle between 101, San Antonio Road, and East Charleston that we call the CTI area because it has Commercial Street, Transport Street, and Industrial Avenue. And it's easier just to say CTI. As well as along the spine of San Antonio Road between Middlefield and East Charleston. So those are the 4 main areas that we're looking at adding new housing. We have a range of housing depending on how tall and how dense we get direction from the council that they want us to go here. But if this area was built out, the areas where there are older buildings that are ready to redevelop builds out, it could be anywhere between 3,000 and 7,000 new housing units in the plan area. We've also identified that there's some areas where we could use some parks. That area where San Antonio meets 101, there are no parks that are within a 10-minute walk. You either have to go to the footbridge and go over into the Baylands, or walk to Ramos Park or to Cubberley. So there are some parts of the area that do have access, but even on the Mountain View side, there are very limited parks near the plan area. So we're looking to add some parks, along Fabian, perhaps in that area, in that triangle, that CTI triangle, and perhaps also at the intersection of Middlefield and San Antonio, where the Toyota dealership currently is. Next slide, please. And so this is what I was talking about a little bit before. We've broken the area down into neighborhoods. We've got those 4 areas that are in the bright colors that are the areas we think will change the most. The yellow, the orange, the blue, and I guess fuchsia maybe. And then there are other areas might see a little bit of change. And then areas like Green Meadow and the greenhouse where we don't expect there to be really any change at all. Next slide, please. So in those 4 main areas that we think there will be a lot of change, we're looking at, like I said, anywhere from 3,900 to 7,000 new residential units if it builds out. We're looking at changing a lot of the commercial and industrial and either replacing that with residential or replacing it with newer office space, depending on whether we get direction about how much office space should be allowed in the area. Right now, there are just under 400 residential units in that area, so going from 400 to 4,000 is a big change. And those new residents are going to need a lot of other things to make it feel like they are living in a real neighborhood, but also feel like they're living in Palo Alto and they're not receiving a different level of experience than other residents of Palo Alto. So that's some of the things that we might want to hear feedback from if you all have thoughts on. Next slide, please. And it's also a transportation plan. So we're looking at pedestrian-first design, low-stress bike routes, first last mile connections between the transit station and people's homes. Parking and demand management is something that we often hear residents talking about. And also smart corridor technology so that we can improve traffic flows, so we can find ways to improve those intersection crossings. Because while we're looking at pedestrian-first design and low-stress biking routes, this is still going to be a vehicle corridor. It is the only truck route that connects 101 to Alma in the city. So that's an important thing, and it's used by, as I mentioned, people who are passing through anywhere from 101 up to Los Altos Hills. There's also a lot of amenities such as the JCC. There are religious institutions, there are childcare, there are small retail locations, gas stations that people use. So there's still going to be vehicle traffic on this road, and we're going to use our smart corridor technology as best as possible to help improve that as we go along. Next slide, please. So while we're looking at improvements at some of the cross streets as well, there's sort of three main sections of San Antonio Road. There's east of Charleston, and part of that is being taken care of by VTA, who is redesigning the 101 interchange. They're looking to add a southbound ramp. They're looking to raise that bridge because it does not meet current highway standards. And they're looking to add bike and ped facilities to get across 101 there as well. So we're looking to tie into that, but also find a way to get people on and off the freeway into Charleston, and have them understand that once they get to Charleston, they're now entering into Palo Alto, into a residential area, and they're no longer on a freeway. The next section is from Charleston to Middlefield. That's where we're getting a lot of development applications already for 5, 6, 7, 8-story apartment buildings. And so we're looking at how do we improve that area and add to people's ability to get from the north part of this map, the top of this map, down to the Caltrain station. And then there's that last section, which includes connections to the Caltrain station, which we feel need to be improved as well. Next slide, please. And we're looking at 3 major intersections for improvement. The Charleston Road intersection, the Middlefield Road intersection, and the Nita Ave intersection, which is a popular crossing for people trying to get across, but it's not a particularly welcoming crossing currently. So we're looking at those, as well as I will add the intersection with Alma and San Antonio Avenue. San Antonio Road itself goes up a bridge and that has a grade separated crossing of the Caltrain through an overpass. But people can stay on San Antonio Avenue and connect onto Alma that way. And there's also a pedestrian crossing that they can use to get from there to the Caltrain station, which we'll also be looking to enhance and improve. Next slide, please. So that concludes my presentation. As I mentioned, we'd like to hear your thoughts. We did provide some additional detail in the packet. We're happy to bring up any of those slides if you want us to talk about them. But we're really here to answer questions and hear your thoughts and concerns. What should we be thinking about as we develop this plan? What should we be including that will make this a better place for our future residents to live and for our current residents to travel to and travel through?
Oh, which one of you go first?
Hi, thank you so much for this presentation. This is So this is near the, I grew up near this neighborhood, and to me, it's like, there's two sides of this, because on one hand, I can say firsthand, this is a great neighborhood to grow up in. And as somebody who wants more housing in Palo Alto, I want more housing. I was, disappointed that the city wasn't making more investments towards our downtown, closer to public transit. But it is important that we add more housing and we make this neighborhood feel, as you said, as much like Palo Alto. Your comment reminded me of whenever kids came over to my house growing up, they would be like, this is Palo Alto, because it was right on the edge of the city. So I think the two main areas for me, it is, protected bike lanes as much as possible. The one thing I didn't see mentioned in this presentation, and I know this was immediately flagged from the jump, but it is those safe routes to schools, and it is how are these families and their kids going to get safely to our schools. So that's kind of the two things that are top of mind for me.
A number of questions come to mind. I've worked on the affordable housing issue for 20 years. First of all, how much of these areas are actually in Mountain View? Because I thought that San Antonio was the boundary between Palo Alto and Mountain View.
So a lot of people believe that. All of the plan area is in Palo Alto.
But are you having conversations with the Mountain View, which is like right across the street?
Yes.
And are they going to be supportive of this?
Yes. So in many places, there's one property is Palo Alto right off the street, and then the property behind them, you're in Mountain View.
Yeah.
So it's like, if you know Charleston, the Taco Bell is in Palo Alto and the KFC is in Mountain View, or the other way around.
Yeah.
It's a very close line to the street, but it's not the street itself.
So I just want to be sure that Mountain View is in the discussions and may have some of their own projects to propose.
They do. So we meet with their planning department fairly regularly. We also meet with their the people that work on their bike lanes, their public works, people they're doing the street improvements, because we want to make sure we're connecting in there, as well as their parks department, to talk about meeting needs for residents on both sides. I've also had the opportunity to brief both the Palo Alto and the Mountain View League of Women Voters and the Mountain View Chamber of Commerce, and several of their elected officials as well. So we've done our best to make them aware and to make sure that what is happening on their side of the border and our side of the border are working in tandem as best as we're able to.
Okay, and then, as I understand it, there are 4 lower income affordable housing levels: below market rate, low income, very low income, and extremely low income, based upon 120, 80, 50, no, 120, 80, 50, and 30% of area median income. Is that still the categories that people look at?
It is. So we have an assignment or an allocation of housing units that we're supposed to build through our housing element. The state every 8 years assigns the region a total housing goal based on those 4 categories.
Yeah.
Or as well as market rate. And then the regional government assigns them down to the cities, so that Palo Alto is working towards meeting housing goals in all of those categories. We're not yet, we do have some requirements in Palo Alto around inclusionary housing or in lieu fees to help us build affordable housing as a city. And we have a fund that we use and are currently using to develop new projects and have funded projects before. And I think something we want in this plan is housing for all income levels. So we'll be looking, when we get to the policy portion of the plan, of how do we best achieve that in this plan area.
Yeah, no, I think that it would be good, because I didn't see I went through all the papers and I didn't see any mention or listing of percentage of apartments that would be, or a percentage of housing units that would be available to these lower income levels. And I think that should be in the data as to what percentage you're talking about. Because if you're talking about private developers coming in and buying up an old, commercial store and tearing it down and building housing, they're going to just want to do full market rate is what they're going to want to do. And so I really encourage you to have those numbers in there so that we can talk about them. And then one other issue, which is, and then I'll be quiet. I'm also on the board of the Avenidas Senior Center, and there's extensive data that one of the growing population groups that is in need of affordable housing is seniors. And I would really encourage you to specifically state that there should be a senior housing community for our lower income seniors within this area, so that we can find a place for the seniors who are getting rent increases of 10% and Social Security increases of 3% every year, and it's getting harder and harder. So please try and include seniors, with lower income seniors in this group.
Hi, thank you for that. I'm not super familiar with how this all gets planned, but I'm just curious at what point in the process or who decides. So you talked about religious spaces, you talked about small businesses. Is there emphasis or pockets or buckets that are designated to make sure that there are spaces for diverse backgrounds? It's like, is that thought about when the planning goes in, or who plans that? Is my question clear?
So are you talking about diversity of uses or diversity?
Not so much, like we're talking about diversity of socioeconomic status, we were talking about that earlier, but in terms of just cultural backgrounds and diversity in that sense, like you talked about religious centers or businesses, for example. Is there thought that goes into that? Like in terms of, and I don't know how it works, where, oh, we set aside, we have a bucket for this particular community, or if we have a religious space for one community, we have religious spaces for other communities. Is that thought about at this stage or at some point, or is it piece by piece?
Just to clarify, were you saying earlier, because I know there is already some faith groups who have, that's what you were referring to, correct? Who are already out there?
Yeah, there are some existing places of worship as well as community centers that are faith-based in the plan area. All of the plan area, other than the roads themselves and sidewalks, are privately owned. So the city is not allocating areas or parcels for specific uses or for specific groups, right? As part of the plan, what we can do is talk about what uses should be allowed or not allowed. And we're trying to find a way to either acquire land or get agreements for use of land for parks and that sort of thing. But as far as what, who's going to be operating a business or who's going to be operating a faith center, those are all going to be happening on private property, and there's limits on what the city can say about who gets to do what where, right, for equity and equality. So more what we look at is, should this just be a housing residential area, or should it be residential with ground floor retail, or should it be zoned to allow for religious uses as well, right? So it should be zoned to allow for medical, for child services and that sort of thing. That's what we're looking at, and I don't think the city will be particularly involved in picking and choosing who actually occupies the space in the end.
One last question, that's okay. Is there a lot of displacement involved when you're rebuilding? Is that accounted for or thought about, or how does that work?
It's definitely thought about, and it's something that we can talk more about. Our assessment is that for dwelling units, there's not likely to be displacement. There's a lot of owned units where the person who lives there could choose to relocate if they wanted to, but it wouldn't be a sort of forced relocation. And even the places that are for rent are not likely to turn over, but there is always the possibility of the 10% a year rent increase and that impacting people. And we have a lot of housing policies that help support renters as well, that are citywide and not just tied to this plan. something that we're growing concerned about is other people that are in the area. There are people who currently park in the area and reside in the area in vehicles, and that's something that, again, citywide we're looking at. You heard a little bit about that, I think, tonight, and you've heard a lot about it beyond tonight, right? So definitely that's something that the city is looking at, that this plan is not necessarily specifically looking at in a vacuum, or yeah, in a vacuum, it's part of a broader city goal. And then the third type is something that we're talking about is retail gentrification or other like industrial gentrification. If a property owner comes in and buys an older building and maybe has cheap rents for commercial space or for a retail space, and they wanted to develop it, and the new building is going to have more expensive rents, then what happens to the person that's currently a tenant on that space? They don't own the property, so they don't have the right to benefit off that redevelopment or the ability to benefit off that redevelopment. So I think it will be important for us to think about how can we preserve some of those places, and if not preserve them, at least find places, ways for them to relocate and still serve the community that they're trying to serve. So it's something that we're thinking about, and we're going to be doing a lot more of that when we get to the policy stage at the next round when we come back to you.
Katie?
I was just going to give a little bit more context that might be helpful. So in terms of what kinds of, if you might want to review some of our past city sessions on economic development. So because the city does get feedback on, let's say, an area zoned for commercial, what kind of policies that we can have that make it easier for certain businesses to come in than other, depending on the type of business. So like he was saying, a like dental office versus like a Soul Cycle. And then with, in terms of the, just to give context on the housing element and the housing requirements. So in the next 8 years, the city is required essentially by law to add 8,000 more, 6,000 more units of 6,000 more units of housing. Half of them need to be designated affordable. One of our policies is when a developer comes, so if a developer comes in and says, I want to build an apartment building there, if they make a certain amount of those units affordable, we'll give them an easier process to get their building built.
Yeah.
So we try to incentivize adding more affordable units since half of those need to be affordable.
Yeah, so there are a lot of rights that property owners have that the city has some control over, but not total control over. But exactly as the commissioner mentioned, we try to offer incentives to get them to do things that would be better for the city, such as providing affordable housing, such as providing parkland, such as providing their tenants with transit cards if they're close to the Caltrain station. There's a whole host of things, and you know, it's not one or the other. Like sometimes it's a package of things called community benefits that the city asks the developer to provide. And we say, if you do this, then we'll either make it easier for you to develop, or we'll allow you to have additional units that will then make your project more profitable. So those are things that we're doing currently on a like site-by-site basis throughout the city. And one of our hopes is with the plan is that we can sort of set up a framework so we don't have to do it site-by-site. That there's, they have the certainty of, I get this incentive if I do this thing, and we can go from there, and it's not starting from square one with every single property that comes in.
I just want to repeat that, because I know that lots of private developers want to meet their affordable housing quota with BMR, below market rate, which for a family of four means you can earn over $200,000 a year and be at 120% of area median income. And that's not the group we want the developers to be providing housing for. When the developers you have to have 20% as affordable, I hope that they are below 80% of AMI as low income and not below market rate. But the developers love to use below market rate, say, oh, we're doing it. We're doing all these below market rate. And so low income, with some units for very low income, 50% AMI. So those are the populations that really need the housing. So let's not let the developers get away with the BMR quotas.
Amy, Mary Kate?
I'm actually serving on the advisory group, so I've seen all these materials before, and I appreciate the time and effort you're putting into collecting community voices. I don't have much to say at this point. I think the challenging thing is so much of this just depends on what what happens at the next stages. I know you're at the kind of at the general collecting feedback stage, and at this point, we don't know if there's going to be 20-story high rises or 5-story typical, more typical. I guess not even in that area. It's like 2 stories, right? Most of it. So I think there's still a lot to be determined. The one thing I would ask you to think about, like if you were here earlier and heard about the power of supportive housing for those of our most needy, especially given that that is an area right now where most of our most vulnerable residents do live in their RVs on Fabian and on industrial and commercial ways right there. So if there is a way to think about, okay, we're going to displace, we don't think of it as displaced because they don't live there, but they are living there now and they will be displaced probably before any of this development ever happens. But maybe as a way of counteracting some of that displacement, thinking about if there's a way of, and I know it's complicated with like you have to get the developers, blah, 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 and all of that, but if there's a way of doing even more than just below the benchmark housing, but actually supportive housing for those folks who would probably most benefit from it, who are living there currently. That's it. Oh, and also, I don't know if you've been able to reach out to the mosque that's in that area. We've had listening sessions with our Muslim community and our Arab community, and it's an interesting mosque because their community is mostly in San Jose, but the mosque is in Palo Alto. But if you need a connection, we have one through the HRC, so they would be great people to reach out and ask how they're feeling about these changes as well.
Thank you.
Amy?
I'm just curious, what is the impact on the public education system with the addition of this many units? Do new schools need to be built?
That is a good question, and that's something that we're also asking. So a little bit of background, the schools aren't part of the city, they're part of the school district, and the school district boundaries were set before the city boundaries were set. There was a period in the 50s and 60s where not everything that is currently Palo Alto was Palo Alto yet. Some of it was still unincorporated, and same with Mountain View. But the Palo Alto Unified School District and Mountain View Wisman School District had to agree on where their boundary was going to be at that time. So part of our plan area is currently in the Mountain View Wisman School District, and part of it is in the Palo Alto Unified School District. We've reached out to both school districts to talk about their thoughts on this. Currently, there's pretty good capacity at all of the schools, with the partial exception of JLS Middle School, which still has some capacity, but is closer to capacity than any of the other schools in Palo Alto, or this end of Mountain View. So, you know, there's some things that could be done in terms of slightly adjusting catchment areas. You know, we raised the idea of perhaps turning Greendale back to a community school, which it hasn't been for a long time. We didn't get much concern back from the school district about the number of students yet. Their main concern was how are the students going to get to school. Here in Palo Alto, we have about a 70% either walk or bike rate for our students to get to schools. And it's, you know, asking them to go from an area that currently doesn't have housing and is surrounded by very auto-centric streets and uses to the other side of San Antonio to get to a school is tricky. So we're looking at finding ways of grade-separated crossings, perhaps, so that they don't have to go through the traffic. or other improvements we can make to the intersections. But I think capacity is something we're going to have to continue looking at. The Palo Alto University School District is starting their new capital plan cycle, so we've reached out and let them know about what our projections are for this plan, so they can take that into account. But in the end, decisions about new schools or changing boundary lines is in the hands of the school districts and not in the hands of the city.
Thank you.
Well, yes, thank you for coming, because this is voluminous work, which is going to go on for many years. Palo Alto is changing. Most of my critical questions Don has already raised. I'd like to see the numbers on low-income housing. I'd like to see the numbers on the slightly higher affordable housing. I'd like to see the breakdown for senior housing. But here are some of my questions. For those of us who know that arena down there, it's block to block, Mountain View, Palo Alto. And it seems to me that we need enormous coordination with Mountain View. Now, there's an area, the East Charleston Plaza is what it's called. It's owned by Presidio Ventures Partners. And I routinely sublease buildings for other NGOs. And I have been in conversations looking for RV parking, but some of the segments that they own, that may be in Palo Alto, may be in Mountain View, are abutting the 101. What is our thinking on air quality, children outside? What are we thinking about? Because they turned me down for RV parking because it would be unsafe. If there were children, there were old people, etc. And because I've been searching for safe RV parking lots, I keep searching, but most of those lots were not safe for people living there. What are your thoughts on all that?
Sure. So I obviously can't speak on behalf of Presidio Bay Ventures.
No,
but
and I'm not asking you to comment on that, please.
Sure. But they do own that shopping plaza.
Yes.
Which is in Mountain View, but right on Palo Alto border.
Bingo.
And they have an application in with the city of Mountain View to redevelop it. It's asking for a lot of office space, as well as some mid-rise residential, and some retail, and some plaza space as well. And they would, I think we've been talking to them as well about how this area might be changing. There's some thoughts about having office be along 101, and have that be a buffer, about having some kind of vegetative buffer, which has often helped to mitigate some air quality conditions as well. But the air quality from 101, as well as the flood hazard from storm surge or sea level rise from the bay, are real environmental issues that will have to be addressed. Part of this plan will include a CEQA document where we review all of the environmental impacts, both that this plan will create, as well as that are existing, that will impact the people who will reside in the plan area in the future. And through that process, we'll work to find the best possible mitigations for those sorts of things. I don't have an answer for you today about what we would do, but it is something that will be considered as part of this planning process.
Thank you. And I didn't really want to comment on Presidio Partners and the land tracts that they own, but rather on the abatement to the freeway, and moreover, of the safety.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
Do we have any comments in the room or anybody online?
No comments online or in the room.
Then let's thank you for the laborious work you've embarked on to create a new Palo Alto. Thank you. A 2-minute break so he can take his moment. On with our subcommittees and our liaisons. Well, our liaison, a person is finished. Are there subcommittees, Sophie, that we should be hearing from?
So I think before that, we're going to review and approve the subcommittee and liaison commissioner assignments, which can be found on the last page of your packet. And this will be an action item.
Okay, so we'll either approve or disapprove of them. And can we do an addition at this time and make sure CDAW is inclusive?
Yes.
Okay, then am I allowed as chair to move that we add CDAW to our list of liaisons and subcommittees?
Yes.
Okay, I so move. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Ask about that, though. Didn't it sound like that's going to be coming up in front of council very shortly as part of Women's History Month, so it might not be relevant for very long?
I didn't hear a word of that.
Oh, sorry,
no,
Greer,
no.
Vice Mayor Stone mentioned that sounded like they might be voting on CETA at the council level next week.
Yes, they will be talking about CEDA, but there may be further direction to the HRC for further recommendation for CEDA and further exploration into different avenues of how we can apply the CEDA ordinance.
Okay. Exactly. So we have a motion. Elena?
Yes, sorry, just a moment while I get it up here on the screen.
Thank you. Vice Chair Causey.
Yeah, I'll second the motion.
Oh, no, I got it.
And we can definitely do multiple motions, but does everyone want to take a second to review? Have we all reviewed your designated council member and the subcommittee you're assigned to, just in case there are any other changes that we want to bundle together. Thank you, guys.
Were there any other changes or additions?
Could you type out the meaning of the acronym CEDAW?
And it was seconded by Vice Chair. Period at the end. Should we call a vote?
Commissioner Ansari.
Aye.
Vice Chair Kazi.
Aye.
Chair Kraus.
Aye.
Commissioner Barr.
Aye.
Commissioner Stimler.
Aye.
Commissioner Shea.
Aye.
And Commissioner Carnum is absent, so the motion passes.
Thank you. Let's recognize our commissioner, Amy Shea, who has become a friend and ally and a good colleague over the last number of years. And I first met Amy through who I call my Asian sister, who is Dr. Sophia Yen. And I'm so happy that she introduced us and that we got this time to work together. I applaud the work she does at Glide in San Francisco, and I wish her great success going forward with her personal life and with the kind of funding that she continues to get for Glide. Thank you, Amy. And please.
I'm really sad you're leaving. I wish you were staying. We both got joined at the commission at the same time, and from the jump, you were always so smart and so thoughtful and always had so much to add to the conversation. You're going to leave really big shoes to fill. And just thank you so much for your service, and we do have a cake for you in the back.
Well, farewell. I will miss you. We will miss you. Okay.
I just have some brief remarks.
Please.
Okay. As I conclude my service on the Palo Alto Human Relations Commission, I wanted to extend my sincere gratitude to our chair and past chair for their steady guidance, leadership, and support. Your commitment to fostering respectful dialogue and advancing equity in our community has been both inspiring and grounding. I'm deeply appreciative of the opportunity to learn from each of you and to contribute in some small way to this important work. I also want to thank all of my fellow commissioners. I have learned so much from each of you and truly appreciate our time together. I hope to stay in touch and remain available for any informal conversation. Wishing you all the very best in the important work ahead.
Are we allowed to clap?
And also, I don't think anyone mentioned it, but thanks so much his route. That was a huge heavy lift that you did for us, so thank you so much.
All right, let's cheerfully move on to city official reports. Do the commissioners have reports? Council liaison reports? And is there anything to add from staff?
I'll jump in with a subcommittee report. So Commissioner Barr and I, who serve on the subcommittee for the Community Development Block Grant Funding, recently met with city staff to review this year's CDBG funding cycle. So for our newer commissioners, as a refresher, CDBG is one of the 3 pots of funding we handle. Specifically, this is administered by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. It provides funding to local governments to support community development activities that benefit low and moderate income residents, including affordable housing, social services, workforce development, and community infrastructure. You might see CDBG mentioned frequently in the news recently, so if you have any questions around the current things in the news cycle around the federal administration and want more information about that, bring that to our next meeting. This year we have several new applicants, and I think many community members will be excited to see them, and I think staff did a really thoughtful job of trying to distribute, make sure everybody got some piece of the pie when everybody is doing important work and addressing significant needs right now. And I want to flag one topic that tends to generate discussion each year. Within CDBG, there are several different categories of funding, including workforce development. Historically, there has always been only one organization that applies for this category, and it is a for-profit organization. And each year, the commission has a very lively debate about whether or not a for-profit organization should receive funding. So I'm letting everybody know in advance they have applied again. So if you have questions around that, come prepared ahead. The organization is going to try to have a representative available. Staff is going to be prepared to speak to that. So come prepared ahead so it can be a calm and thoughtful, productive discussion as everyone prepares for the upcoming meeting.
What are the dates for to apply?
So the dates to apply to CDBG are closed. You guys will be discussing it at your next meeting.
Fine. That's what, so that is a person who has applied.
Yep.
Okay, Commissioner Mary Kate, get ready.
Just a brief note that the HERD committee, the Housing Economic Recovery and Development Subcommittee did meet, and we have agreed that of these topics, housing is the #1 priority, that economic recovery and development is less of an issue right now, so we're going to be talking about housing as an important issue for the commission to think about in the future.
Anyone else? Are there any comments from the commissioners? Any information? Then I think we can adjourn.